Go on, buddy. Hey, everybody, it's Dan O'Connor and Heather Lipman, and welcome back to this week. We're going to be talking more about tips from industry experts. And Heather, could you tell us a little bit about what is your industry? Because I tell people a lot that you are the industry expert, and I believe that. And I know that it's job hunting and headhunting and career placement and resume writing, but I don't think I can say it as well as you can.
I'm also a great chef, but we'll get to that later. Yes. So I have a background in nonprofit business management and then transitioned into executive headhunting for life sciences. So biotech, pharma, and medical devices. And all the while understood that some of the world's most brilliant scientific minds created some of the worst resumes. So I started to look into the art and science of resume writing. I should note, I entered the nonprofit sector specifically with an interest in grant writing. So writing's always been, something that I've found to be very interesting and a passion of mine. As a headhunter, I would send out thousands of emails. And so naturally, I'd want to learn which ones worked and which ones didn't. And all of these elements translate into finding the right talent for companies. Somewhere along that line, I discovered a lot of people reached out to me for resume help. And what I quickly found was it wasn't necessarily the resume that was the issue. It was that they were targeting the wrong positions, or they were targeting the right positions with a good resume, but their method for submission was faulty. And so perhaps they had their method was only through the online portal or through job boards. And I quickly discovered sometimes job boards don't have very reliable information. Obviously they want to bring traffic to the site. And there are a lot of recruiters who will post ads just to get resumes for their own bank. So I started working with folks on a very, one-on-one consultative basis to design a roadmap that basically takes them from the seat they're in today to the one they envision in their dream job.
That's fantastic, Heather. Can you tell me, Heather, do you have any special tips? And we're going to be doing a little bit more loosey-goosey Q&A later on today as well, so that'll be good. Heather, I guess, has some good questions she's been saving up. So today I'd like before I forget, do you have any specific tips for people who are doing Zoom interviews or video interviews?
Great question. Watch a lot of mine and Dan videos so that you get the proper etiquette down. No, I'm just kidding. We've seen some hilarious things happen on Zoom interviews. From anything like a housekeeper in the background with headphones on singing while they're mopping, to folks forgetting they're not wearing. Yeah, right. She's just a great job, by the way. Thank you, Olga. To folks forgetting they're still in their jammies from the waist down and standing up. Of course, having pets jump in the background trying to steal your coffee, and depending on your interviewer, that could be a really coincidental, great sort of like divine breakthrough for a moment of connection, or could 100% immediately disqualify you from the running. The tip for that is control your environment. When you're on a video chat with someone, to the best of your ability, control your environment. Another really fun trick I learned at one of the sales jobs I had was we would call on decision makers at enterprise companies. And so I would look up the decision maker before I made the call and try and identify what sports team they were a fan of, so that I could take like the sports team banner and like hang it behind me. So if they were a huge, they were a huge Lakers fan, and clearly I never pretended to be an avid sports fan, but they appreciated the effort of the research, the time I invested to learn about them before, because everything is about respect and earning the right. And when you show somebody that you've taken the time to know who they are before you try to take their money, it really helps the sale. So that would be another tip, is to do as much research on with whom you're going to be interviewing before you get on camera. This whole philosophy is how to warm up cold introductions, cold outreach. And again, it's, if we think about it, when meeting in person, you don't just sit down in someone's office and start saying, when I was 7, I did this, and at 10, I won the spelling bee. It's hello, how are you? You warm the conversation with some humanness first.
Okay. And is there any way that people should Is there anything that's different about the way we should dress for an interview? Could you give, for example, I
Yes.
tell young women who are just starting to interview, who don't really know and have a whole lot of money, I'll say put a white, like a white men's dress shirt type of, white tailored dress shirt, pencil skirt, black pumps, you're good to go. Hair in a ponytail, but that might not be the right thing to but that was back in my day. So do you have like a standard kind of outfit that a man and a woman could wear if they're going into an interview and they really just wanted something basic, but that works?
So I would say that in around 2018, I started to notice the shift. And all of a sudden, my pencil skirt and collared shirt and pumps shifted to, linen ponchos with beautiful bags. And that was because I was being interviewed at a fashion recruiting agency. And so again, I'm just trying to mirror the environment I'm trying to penetrate. If I've had plenty of interviews with CEOs who are literally in tank tops with baseball caps on, totally unshaven, and 100% professional the whole time. When I show up to someone in a tank top and a baseball cap in a corporate suit, I create a wedge.
Right.
Or I even open my mouth. So, basic things, just like I would say basic things for a resume, no spelling errors, no grammar errors, make it aesthetically pleasing. Same thing for an outfit, no cleavage showing. Make sure your zipper is zipped up for the men, because I noticed that sometimes I think you're good. That happens. But I mean, just sort of basic, clean, presentable, polished to the extent of the brand you're trying to represent.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so it's a Sunday morning, so you have to forgive me, Heather. I know that was that was a very subtle way to say comb your hair. Okay, I had asked, or last week I had said that we were going to be talking about 3 different interview questions, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go over those questions. What would you say when you're asked this, and what should you say? Because your questions to ask before you leave, I thought were super, and they're also. I noticed you have a knockout question that we haven't discussed yet. And and then you have a few different questions that you sent me to kind of make small talk about the job. Which one would you like to do first?
Let's start with how to present, what's the word? I don't want to say as a good person, but the standard traditional way.
Okay.
Standard traditional interviews, and this is the most common question I'm approached with, is, how do I talk about my strengths, or how do I talk about my weaknesses? So again, all of the questions to these are going to be tailored to the opportunity which you're interviewing for. So let's use, let me think for a minute. Let's say I was interviewing to work at DanO'ConnorTraining.com.
Sorry, we're full.
For not hiring. If you were to ask me, Dan, go ahead and interview me. Ask me about my strengths.
Hey, Heather. Thanks
for
coming. Thanks for making the time to come in and see us today.
Thank you for
Heather,
having
before we begin, you're welcome. Before we begin, Heather, could you tell me a little bit about you? Remember we got that one?
Perfect.
Tell me about yourself.
Okay, now I'm off the record. I'm so happy you asked that. So this is how I don't want to answer that question. Now I'm back on the record.
Okay.
I have a dog named Bella, and I wake up at 6:27 every morning. I make my bed. I take a hot shower. I look forward to cooking my favorite meal. Okay, I'm going to end right there. Now, Dan O'Connor Training does not care about any of those things yet. Maybe once I'm hired and we're building a relationship. But at this point, I'm playing the game. I just want to get in the door. I just want to be HeatherO'ConnorTraining.com more than anything else in the world. So now let's go through it the correct way. Ask me.
Okay. And by the way, tell me, I'm sure you'll tell me, like, what do you have in your mind before you say it all? Or are you going to tell me that at the end?
I'll tell you it when I know it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. So come on in, Heather. Come on. Hey, thanks for taking the time to come and visit us today. So Heather, before we begin, tell me, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I do have some questions, but I'd love to answer yours first.
Okay, then tell me about yourself, Heather.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I live to help people communicate, whether that's on paper or in person. Words are my passion. They are my reverence. Ever since I'm little, I've had an affinity for words. It started with essays in school, and then it went to an MBA thesis, which I spent a summer writing. And in my professional career as a recruiter, I started to evaluate the integrity of resumes and became naturally enthralled with the power of the words that can be communicated on a strategic resume or strategic outreach. And so, tell you about me, Dan, I'm all about the words.
God, somebody.
Turn it down, man.
I know, turn it down. Okay, that's great, Heather. That's great. Tell me, Heather. Tell me what do you think are some of your strengths? Now, by the way, Heather, should I ask you that question the way I should ask it, or should I just ask it that way, the way most people do? Should we also give people tips for actually asking those questions when they need to?
Sure. Let's do that after this. I think
let's do that after that.
Truly pretend you're interviewing me to work there. Maybe this.
Okay. So Heather, tell me what are some of your strengths that you think you'd be bringing here to DanO'ConnorTraining.com?
The strengths that I bring to the table, Dan, are really the foundation of empathy, gifted writing skills, avid research skills. I have an element of perfectionism to an extent, and I really live to make an impact on other people's lives. I really believe that will translate well here at Dan O'Connor Training, because I'm invested in helping people champion the difficulties they're facing. And I'm the type that's so relentless that we won't stop until we've come up with that solution.
All right. Are you single?
I am.
Can you ask those questions? I would actually ask a question like that if I wasn't thinking. Can you ask somebody if they're single or married?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No, that's a total HR violation. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And I didn't even ask, are you married? I asked, are you single? Okay, so, well, then just forget I asked that question, Heather.
Do you see how I reflexively answered it?
Tell me, what was your answer?
I reflexively answered your question, knowing that that's not a question I should be asked during an interview, but that's literally what happens real time is, I think actually you mentioned it in one of your videos from 6 years ago called How to Deal with Assholes at Work, where you mentioned the fact that when folks are caught off guard, what happens is we're responding from our right brain, the emotional place. And really what I'm trying to do is let you meet my left brain right now in this interview. That's my logic. And so personally, is that your doggy?
This buddy, he's upset. He's not getting the spotlight today. He's like my brother. He's a spotlight stealer.
Oh, Marty. Okay, here we go. And so it's important in order to avoid being caught off guard. It's really important to try and do some type of self-care or self-soothing technique, whatever that may be for you. Maybe it's dancing to share. Maybe it's taking a few minutes to meditate. Maybe it's cuddling with your buddy. But
you mean my dog?
your dog. But what just happened was you literally just caught me reacting instead of responding, which is ultimately my goal is to be able to have the entire conversation from a responsive point of view, not a reactionary point of view.
Okay. Well, then respond to this. Tell me, what do you think tell me what are some of your weaknesses, Ms. Lipman?
So happy you asked that, Dan. Now, when I do that, what I'm doing is giving myself a couple of seconds to actually think about what I want to say to you.
Good tactic.
So, yes. Some of my weaknesses are that I really don't accept status quo. I really don't believe that there's only one way to do something. And oftentimes I'll work very diligently to prove that statement wrong. Another weakness of mine is I tend to get bored in monotonous, repetitive environments. And I'll pause right here. Dan O'Connor Training is the land of spontaneous, exciting elements. There is nothing monotonous about about DanO'ConnorTraining.com or any of his constituents or any of the work that gets done there. So what I'm doing with my weakness is qualifying a strength for your setting.
Okay. Very
Yes.
clever. Very
Yes.
clever. You still have not yet gotten the gong, but the gong is still there. So tell me, Heather. Wait a minute. We did your weaknesses,
Let's
your
do another
strengths.
week. Let's do another weakness. Let's say I wasn't applying for DanO'ConnorTraining.com.
Okay. Let's say that tell me, where are you applying?
Where am I applying? I'm applying to work at, I don't know, pick a place. Think of something.
Ace Hardware Store.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to go there actually. So Ace Hardware Store sells hardware. So one of my weaknesses might be, let's see. Well, Dan, I'm really bothered when I walk into a store and don't receive the customer service that I need. So I have no tolerance for a failure of excellent customer service.
Good.
Yes.
That will never happen here at DanO'ConnorTraining.com.
No.
And you know what I like you know what I like to do, Heather? For those particular questions, I apologize. My computer's making noises. Normally the tell us your weaknesses question comes after the tell us your strengths question, right?
Yes.
So I like to knock them dead. And you know how the people who ask those questions are generally people who do a lot of personality profile, and they know all about those personality and working styles, the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, and all of that stuff, right?
Yes.
So if they ask me what my strengths are, I like to say something like, well, I'm a driver type. I'm sure you understand what type of personality and working style that is. And so some of my natural strengths are going to be that I am a good leader, that I get things done quickly, that I'm very goal oriented. Then later on, when they ask me what are some of your weaknesses, then it's so easy because they're going to be familiar with those types of personality tests. And I can say, well, as I mentioned before, I'm a driver type. And so naturally, I'm going to struggle more than other people would with doing things like actually making a personal, emotional connection with my coworkers, as you could imagine. But that goes along with being a driver who's very goal oriented. And then I go right back to my goals again, or to my, my strengths again. So it doesn't work for every situation.
It might be a newer, it might be more traditional. I mean, just personally, I don't come across those questions too often. In my interviewing experience, only one person has ever known about DISC, and she was more mature than me. But it's very intriguing material. You identified me as an 8 last week. I don't know what that means, but I'll look into it.
I did, and I never sent you over my little handy dandy guide.
The Enneagram.
I'm going to put what?
Was it the Enneagram?
The Enneagram. I'm going to put, for anybody who doesn't know about the Enneagram is my favorite personality system that teaches you about working styles and our compulsion, because most personality systems or working style systems out there, those different tests, they're all the same, and they're all really invented within the past 50 years, and they're all really knockoffs of one another. There was one original, and then all of the rest just kept calling them different things, right? Because I would have had to pay the original inventor of it. So instead I invent a Carrie and a Samantha, and those are the 4 types, you know what I mean? So the only one that I've ever found to be different is the Enneagram. And the Enneagram, according to my mother, was passed along verbally for like hundreds, thousands of years by the Sufis or something, until finally it found its place in modern psychology. And it's about how everybody has a real sick compulsion that drives them through life.
It. Oh my God.
Right? It's the most real one of all. Like all of the others are all, these are your strengths and these are your weaknesses. Right. The Enneagram is like, no. You have one sick compulsion that you have on your mind all day long, and you go through life thinking, well, I must be that, or if I'm not that, what am I? I must be that. You have to think that I'm that. We have these things that drive us. So the Enneagram has 8 compulsions, and it's surprisingly, shockingly accurate. So what I do is if I'm dealing with a difficult person and I haven't been able to figure them out yet, if you go to your reference manual, your reference library, and you have a good working styles system, you look at, let's say, the characteristics of each one of the types until you find the one that is your current problem. And then when you find them, you're like, yes, that's it. And all of the things will match them, instead of a majority of the affirmations, let's say. And then it will give you an insight into really like what's their biggest fear, like what's going on there that they're so afraid of, that I can then, touch on and tell you, you don't need to fear that from me. I'm not gonna hurt you.
Why can't those honest conversations take place yet in the interview, in your opinion?
I think they can, but what honest conversation? Oh, do you mean like what's your type? If somebody were to say, what's your personality type?
Or just like, we think you're right for the job, Dan. Why don't you tell us your real concerns about coming here? And this speaks to, the two set of questions that I asked you, which was, they're the traditional, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why do you want to work here? And I want to make sure we just cover that. Why you want to work here. The answer is always, again, your personal mission is the company's business mission. I want to work here because saving trees is what I eat, breathe, and sleep. I want to work here because I can't imagine myself not helping people in this specific way. So again, that's what I call value matching. But as I shared with you, I would love to go into an interview and really ask, why was the last person fired?
That's right. You were giving those questions. You gave those questions to me earlier.
I'd really like to know, when you want to bash your head against the wall because you hate your staff, what are they doing? Like, I really want to know.
Did you ask those questions ever during your interviews?
I mean, I think I might start to. I really, there have been times where I've interviewed for jobs that I knew I didn't want, or just for some reason knew I wasn't going to get. Now, not necessarily promoting this as a best practice, but if you're gearing up for your job search, I do recommend taking a practice interview first, especially if you've been out of work for a while. Apply for a job that you know that you're most likely going to be asked to interview for. Not one that you might always take, just so you can practice, because you're in a low pressure situation. You don't really want the job. It doesn't matter if you say the wrong thing, but you're actually there to practice your ability to interview well so that you can do that for the job you actually want. Just like I mentioned, there's a lot of recruiters that'll post jobs online just to collect resumes and bank them. That's not nice. It's not ethical. It's not illegal, but it's a practice. And every sales industry has some practices that can, rub people the wrong way. So that's one way.
So to speak.
The corporate side leverages all of his resources. And the truth is, there could be a time down the road where that recruiter references those resumes that someone submitted, under the assumption there was an actual job open. They may not know that job might be open 9 months from now, and that recruiter might just be working very proactively. And, I can see the merit of that hunter mentality. And why can't talent do the same? Why can't they accept an interview for a job that they know they're not going to take simply to go through the practice of interviewing? That's, again, it might not be nice, but it's not illegal. If it's going to help advance your career, it's fair game.
It's fair game.
Fair
That's right.
game. I love
I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I got really excited by a question somebody asked that said,
so you can see the questions.
I can see them. Oh my God. These people are hilarious, by the way. So let's go through a question. How to address health issues when you are almost on the finish line of being hired and everything seems good. That is on the mild side, but does require, maybe I can't see the whole question. How to address health issues when you are almost on the finish line of being hired and everything seems good. Oh, okay. So this is great. You have
health issues
that you feel you need to share with the company. Dan and I were talking about this earlier. Does it need to be shared? There's this great acronym I heard called WAIT, and it stands for Why Am I Talking? And I think it's really an interesting practice. And twice this week I was approached by talent. One talent informed me that they were fired from their job for sharing confidential company information on their LinkedIn profile. Now, to me, it didn't really look like very highly sensitive confidential information. And part of the confidential information shared was actually public information. This person mentioned the scope of their responsibilities at a, let's say like a top 10 company, like some magazine named this company one of the top 10 in their industry. This person put on their LinkedIn profile, the scope of their responsibilities, and then was subsequently terminated for sharing confidential company information. And on the converse, we have a question like this. how to address health issues when you're almost on the finish line of being hiring. So MKXV, if I'm not interpreting this correctly, chime in here. But what I think you're saying is, I have some hesitancy to share some information that might be necessary or valuable to the employer. It seems a little tumultuous. I don't want to risk my opportunity of getting the offer. When do I disclose that? So, it is California employment law, at least. And disclaimer, I'm not an attorney or an expert on any of this, but from my experience, what I know is if you require some type of special accommodation to fulfill the duties of the opportunity, the employer has to make a good faith effort to accommodate whatever need you may have. So if it's something along that line, that's something you want to discuss in the interview. What people don't like is the swindle. They don't like to think they're hiring Dan O'Connor, and then at the end of it, Dan's brother shows up for the job, which may be, a bonus and may not be.
They would love that.
Okay. I've heard great things, but people want.
My inclination would be not to disclose any health issue that might be more of a pain for the company, because I think a lot of companies would just write me off there. Is that okay?
I mean, do they really need to know? I think is the real question.
Right.
Do they
let's say that right after you started, I'm assuming that this might be one of those health issues that would cause you to maybe let's say ask for every other Friday off. You might be gone during lunch a lot. Things that actually affect your work. So then it's like after you get hired, guess what?
Great. So there are a lot of cases where people have regular health maintenance. You may want to say something like, I am actively involved in my church ministry and we meet once a week. Every Friday. I don't want to say I need to leave at 3. Help me with the words here. Every Friday at 4 p.m. I'm committed to an event at my church.
I'm totally down with those words, because when I was working administrative and banking jobs, I moved around a lot in those years. And every single job that I went to, I would always say during the interview, because that's the best time to say it because they want to hire you, I would always say to them, just before we start, I wanted to make sure it's all right that I'm unavailable to work every Tuesday night at 7. So if I can work anytime, my schedule's open, except I'm unavailable Tuesday nights between 7 to 8. And I hope that wouldn't be a problem, because every other time slot I am available. And then you don't tell them it's to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer with your dad.
Oh my God, I love it.
But right, like as long as you say it in the interview, you can have off every Tuesday night.
Absolutely. And again, the reason I brought up something religious is because it's a protected right. And so you can't be discriminated against for your sex, your age, your race, your sexual orientation, or your religious beliefs. And so that's something that the employer is going to be afraid to probe more on, because that's your right. So if you have a health condition or a health need that requires regular maintenance, be mindful of that firstly while you're searching for your job. Try and identify an opportunity that is going to be open to that. For example, if it was someone who was in recovery, maybe apply for a job that's based around mental health advocacy or recovery based or something religious, where the mindset typically of the organization is already favorable to your circumstance. So that's one way. But then again, maybe that's not where you want to work. Maybe you want some separation from your personal life and your professional life, and you really want to work for the tech giant. Again, then you have to ask yourself, what can the tech giant work with for me and against me? And one of my protected rights is, freedom to my religion. And so if I'm committed every week to go to an event, and you don't have to say church, you could say, I have weekly commitments at a religious organization. And I agree with Dan. It's 100% best to do that during the interview, because number one, if you don't show all your colors, they can't show you all of theirs. If this really is something that you're going to be pursuing while you're employed, don't you want that to be easy on yourself? Some won't make it easy, but some will. And you have the right to work somewhere where you don't feel stressed out about something that enhances, your well-being at the same time. And so if you bring it up during the interview, you then give them the opportunity to say that works for me or that doesn't. And let it be okay if that doesn't work for them.
Let it be okay. Okay, let's say hello to Linda from Sydney. Hello, Linda. Okay, so we did the health issues. And what about, let me see. I'd be looking for someone who knows.
Yeah, this one is hilarious.
Which one?
On your just reading. I'd be looking for someone who knows how to work on real weaknesses and avoid hiring a narcissist or someone non-reflective. So L. Browning wants to work with someone who's emotionally intelligent, someone who's willing to be introspective. So I believe that's what that phraseology means, who knows how to work on real weaknesses. So if I was to say something like, Dan, one of my weaknesses is I'm kind of ADD and, I start like 7 projects an hour. And then the next day I get to the second phase of each of those 7 projects. And by Friday, they're all complete. Dan might say, I don't really care how you get it done. Will you get it done? And I might say, it'll get done. It's going to be a painful process and it'll look like a mess the whole way there, but it's going to get done. Dan might not care. So actually, Dan has a lot of videos about narcissism.
I do. And because, I spend a lot of time with my mother, so I get practice. No, I do think L. Browning, if you're looking for somebody who's really going to work on their weaknesses and is able to be reflective, try asking questions like this then during the interview. Can you tell me about a time in your last position? Because it looks like she's hiring, correct? Is that the impression you get?
Yes.
Browning. Ask people then, tell me about a time in your last position when you overcame a weakness of yours, how you overcame it, and what was the result? And when you ask people like that 3-step question of tell me about a time when this happened, how did you do this, and what was the result? Then you that's like wouldn't you agree, Heather, that is like the crystal ball future predictor, because the greatest indication of future behavior is past behavior. And what a lot of people make the mistake of doing during interviews, if they're interviewing, are saying things like, so Heather, tell me about a time, or tell me about when you overcame a weakness of yours. Tell me what you do to overcome weaknesses. And so people can invent things and think, well, what do? I like to read books and I like to stay after work. And I like, and which is all irrelevant because that's like what you're dreaming up you would like to do. But if they tell you what happened in the past, it tends to be an indicator of what will happen in the future.
So Dan used this really nice term, crystal ball. And what he's actually talking about is a method called STAR. So I like that there's some parallel here. STAR is situation, task, action, and result. And this is a great way to formulate achievement statements on your resume and to answer this question anytime you're probed with, tell me about a time. STAR, situation. The situation was everybody was leaving the company. When I arrived, the turnover rate was, 80%. The task was to fix it. The action I took was I redesigned our employee onboarding process. The result is we've seen a reduction in 50% of turnover in the past 6 months. And that's what I call the before and after story. And that's how I prompt my resume clients often when they're bashful or they really just don't know how to see their contribution. If you've been at the company, you've contributed. It doesn't mean you've raised sales, but it might mean you've raised office morale. It doesn't mean that you've reduced waste, but it might mean that you've, reduced operational inefficiencies. So tell me about the before and tell me about the after. I'd say, Dan, pretend you're on your way home from work and you're livid. You're talking to your best friend or Olga, and you say, finish my sentence. If I wasn't there, this whole place would fall apart. Or, hold on, that was bad. Finish my sentence. These people don't even know that blank.
About my previous employer?
Yeah. Pretend, you're working somewhere and you're leaving totally resentful. You're just fuming. If I wasn't there, blah, blah, blah wouldn't even run anymore. And then, we fill in whatever your blah, blah, blah is. That's your achievement. You're taking ownership for the success of the department. Or these people don't know that if I wasn't there, and I have to almost get them to get angry to tell me, to get the gold. But
so whatever you think you do so well that people could not live without you, that should be something that you intentionally focus on.
Right. And it doesn't always look like a quantifiable achievement, but it might be something like transformed the work culture
Uh-huh.
through weekly conversations in a safe space. Or, it's not always a hard number, but that's the value of telling the story. And that's why I won't write a resume for anyone unless we get on the phone and I actually interview them.
By the way, do you also is something that you do coach people on interview questions? I mean, do you actually?
Oh my gosh, this is my bread and butter. I mean,
Okay, good.
That's not my bread and butter. That's the wrong term. That's my shit. Okay, like that's where I really, really shine. And we'll hit on the point you brought up at the beginning, like how do you really set it up to drive it home during the interview? Interview prep is so much fun. So first of all, when you're making achievements on your resume, the best idea before your interview is to study your own resume so that when you're asked, tell me about a time, it's fresh in your mind. And you're not sitting here sort of like I'm doing sometimes on the spot, like, hold on, let me think. You're like, I'm so happy you asked that. Like, I've got the best answer for you and I already know it. We already went through it. It's already on the resume. And the trick is you don't want to repeat what's on your resume, but you want to expand on it. So, if my achievement on the resume is built the first in-house recruitment function at a unknown startup, a biotech startup. In the interview, when they say, Heather, tell me about a time when you did something great, or even if it's a story like, Heather, tell me about a weakness, I can reference that achievement from various different angles. So here's the achievement: built the first in-house recruitment function at an unknown biotech startup. This is how I could address a weakness. I work best in opportunities that allow in places that allow me to the runway to create. I work best in environments where it's easy to garner buy-in without, from influence without direct authority. And so if they say, tell me about a time, you built something out of nothing, you say, okay, well, I went to a place that had never recruited in-house before. I implemented a database. I interviewed each of the interviewers to find out who they would be looking for, which then informed my sourcing strategy, which also informed my talking points while I was qualifying those I sourced, which also informed the write-up I presented to each member on the executive team so that I was marketing the aspects of this talent's candidacy that was most appealing to them based entirely off what they told me they're looking for. So it's really just...
Why did you quit your last job, Heather?
What was the next question?
Because that is a big question that we get, right? People will ask us how do they respond when people ask them, why did you quit your last job? So think about that one. Have that prepared for the interview that's coming later on.
Well, this is the truth. And sometimes it makes sense when when I ask folks, like, I ask them in this way, what prompted the separation between you and your last employer? And sometimes people will say they weren't paying me enough. I don't think that's wrong. Great. They weren't getting paid enough. So they know their value when they left. I've been fired a lot of times. And so I've actually had to go up against recruiters before say, it doesn't look like you stay anywhere more than 2 years. And, and I very confidently, but humbly say, that's correct. I go where opportunities invite me to grow. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking for. If this isn't that, then we could just hang up right now, and you almost have to make that decision for yourself before you get on the phone. But when you do something like, and this is to go back to that acronym name, MKXV, his question or her question about how to address health issues in the example Dan brought up, by introducing what you do to stay healthy for your life. In an interview, you're communicating many things at once. You're communicating, one, the logistics of the feasibility of the match. You're also letting them know, I'm someone that takes care of myself. With or without you, I'm taking care of myself. And what that lets the employer know is that there is a level of accountability that you bring that another candidate might not. That you're more likely to address any mental health issue you might have, or physical health issue you might have, or any other personal issue you might have way better than another candidate because you're already up here in my face telling me what you need to do for your life to remain copacetic. And a lot of people are starting to really appreciate that. That one point in the interview could be the game changer for you if it's with the right interviewer.
Great. Okay. And we had a couple of people commenting on the Enneagram.
Yes,
And
that's popular.
It looks like that. And the Enneagram, I didn't know it was Chinese. Okay, that technique.
Oh, I thought they were just saying like it doesn't make like, you know, if someone's talking about like quantum physics, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like Chinese to me because it's so far out of my grasp. I don't know.
I think she was saying it's actually of Chinese origin.
Okay. Awesome.
I think you could be right.
I think swimming with the fishies did something.
Swimming with the fishies is back. Oh, good.
Hi. Okay.
So do most companies utilize the service of one specific employment agency or obtaining job?
Or
what's the answer to that one?
Yeah, it depends on the level of the role of their hire. I mean, and the size of the company. You know, there are some companies that employ, you know, omni-channel talent acquisition and recruiting. They'll go to Indeed and post job ads. They'll engage contingency recruiters from staffing vendors like Aerotech or Kelly Services. And then they'll also engage retained search services from companies like Korn Ferry or Heidrick and Struggles. Because each acquisition of talent requires a very different approach, very different messaging, very different research. So job board jobs are typically geared toward active job seekers. You know, it's almost like you're putting worm on the hook and you're going to fish. The job description is the bait, and the fishies swim with the fishies, and the fishies are the job seekers going towards it. When you're head hunting, and that's why it's called head hunting, it's because I'm looking at someone very specific to fill a role that takes a retainer versus a contingency agreement. This is the method of payment. They're going to retain me. They're going to give me X amount of dollars to work on it until it's done, versus contingency, which is like, we'll pay you if we like who you give us, because they understand that there's going to be no rock left unturned if I'm retained to find you the one and only. There's only one Dan O'Connor in this entire world. I'm going to find out who he is, find out how to reach him, not stop until I do, and present to him every single aspect of this job opportunity that's going to excite him. And then I'm going to make sure he's got his Wheaties. He's got a bed for Buddy in the hotel that he stays in when he comes to visit us out of state for the interview. I'm going to make sure that his favorite croissant is ready. This is what I do all the way up till he puts his beautiful little signature on that employment contract.
It is beautiful. And how did you know? Today's Sunday morning, and on Sunday mornings, I generally go to the French bakery to get some croissants. And I didn't have time before today's broadcast, so I will be doing that right afterwards and thinking of you, Heather. And thank you, Heather, for noticing every last little detail like that and finding just the right moment to throw it out.
I would never expect anything less from you, Mr. O'Connor.
No, from you.
Absolutely not.
Now, Heather, that is different from we answered the question, why did you leave your last job, with something like a good standard duct tape one is like, well, tell me if I'm wrong. Well, I was looking for more opportunities, and I had really exhausted all of my avenues of growth at the last company I was at. Is that generally like the mindset you want to portray? If it's like, I was fired because something horrible, you don't want to. Of course, you don't want to say that.
I can't wait one day till I can actually make my real LinkedIn profile. I literally just fantasize about it. But what you're presenting, Dan, is really great. It's the same method of presenting weaknesses in terms of positive traits. So if I was to say something like, I left my job because I hit a ceiling, I plateaued, I outgrew the position, and I'm not the type of person that accepts mediocrity. If I don't accept mediocrity for me, I'm not going to accept mediocrity for you, Mr. Employer. You know, that's my brand. That's what I bring anywhere I go. Anyone who gets me is going to get that benefit. Shouldn't it be you? Like, that's sort of So again, it's just trying to take the reality of the situation and tailor it to still be attractive to your, who is this? What is this called? Your recipient?
Your audience?
Yeah, your audience. So you have to know your audience. This whole thing rests upon knowing your audience. I posted a job last week and I got a lot of, applications. And some of those people, when I started to talk more about the job, they were like, oh, I'm not interested in medical devices. I'm like, but you applied and you gave me we're on the phone because you gave me your resume. Did you read it? I mean, the title is medical device sale, and so what I take away from that is you can post and pray, you can just shoot out a million resumes to whoever, but then you're wasting your own time on the phone 10 minutes later telling the recruiter that the job they have is not what you're interested in. Well, then read the thing and don't submit your resume. And then, like I said last week, what you're also doing by shooting off tons of resumes is advertising your intent to leave your current position, which isn't always super smart. Yeah,
right.
And no, you don't want to be perceived as someone who is desperate to get out of their current position, because then all of a sudden you're perceived as someone who's going to accept less money for the next position because it's somewhere else.
Oh, good point.
Yes.
Okay. And what about, here's one of the things that I do, Heather, when I'm at any job is I keep a journal, and it's my, I have a name for it. It's my, anyway, on the journal on the outside, I'll put a big dollar sign, and then I'll put a T-chart columns in each page. So on the left-hand side, I will write the tasks that I'm performing. And on the right-hand side, I will, what used to be the rule for me, and I'm not saying that this still would pertain, what used to be the rule would be that if there is not a dollar amount that I could attach to that task, quantifying it, then that's a signal to me, stop doing that, because it's a waste of your time if you're not generating money for your boss. Now that's a different day, that's not today's day, but that's what I used to do, so that when it came time for job promotions, or when it came time for review time, when it came time for whatever, it's so helpful to look through that and say, well, let me see what I did. Anything that was above and beyond my regular duties, how much it added up to. Maybe I took over Trixie's job, and to replace her would have cost an extra $50,000 a year, but I took that on, so that's 50,000 in the plus column. Things like that. Do you see people do that ever, or am I the only one who does that?
Not often. I don't see people do it often, but
okay.
That's not to say people don't. There are definitely people who do. Let me tell you what happens when you don't do that. When you don't do that, what you are is the job description. And a lot of people are savvy enough, and they'll rewrite their resume based on a job advertisement of their current title. That's not a terrible idea, but it's not the best idea, because we don't want to know that you can do the task. We want to know that you do the task better than everybody else who does the task.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing actually requires a lot of proactivity. You're investing in your future by investing in yourself in the present. Today I redefined our standard operating procedures, and then I digitized it, and then I created, a Google site and gave the entire staff access, so that we don't have our HR person spending 6 hours of her week going through these policies and procedures that everybody can access with one click instead.
Exactly, because that's really quantifiable right there.
Absolutely. And it's not saving any money. It's not bringing in any money. I mean, we could stretch it a little bit longer if we had that data to see how HR's availability does translate into dollars. But for the most part, we won't. So the next best thing is, we streamlined employee performance appraisal by tracking the number of clicks onto that link. We know which employees are actually reading the standard operating procedures because we see who clicked it. So that might be a factor in our new appraisal process. That's a very diplomatic way and a very fair way to assess if that person is doing what you want them to do. Secondly, you're now optimizing the HR director's time for human resource issues rather than hand-holding, because there's no point to repeat this every single time. Let's just make it a central document, and then let's have people be more proactive in their day. And when they come across a question in their day, rather than bug the HR person who's dealing with the human resources, they can go into the Google site and keyword search whatever task they're having, a question with. And then if the question still isn't answered, that's the time when you reach out to HR and say, hey, FYI, I'm struggling with my invoicing feature. I've checked the Google Doc. I don't see this addressed. When you have a moment, can you please help me? And so the achievement is, implemented digital standard operating procedures, semicolon, saved HR 6 hours a month, semicolon, saw employee performance increase by 12% quarter over quarter. And it just goes to show how one action can trickle out into so many different avenues.
The butterfly effect.
Yeah, butterfly.
By the way, recently I did a course called The 8 Essential Skills That Employees, this is the long version of the title, The 8 Essential Skills That Employees Look For in 2022, or employers look for. You know how there are the communication skill sets that employers are looking for more than any other skills these days? Do you have any tips for people for specifically showcasing their communication skills that are the ones that their employers are looking for? Things that, do you have any maneuvers that people can do during an interview that really showcases their skills?
Absolutely. A really well-polished LinkedIn profile, a really well-polished resume, really effective interview communication, interview, like post-interview and pre-interview communication. And this is the zinger that we were talking about in the beginning. When you're interviewing, you are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. If you show up and you don't have any questions, you either look like you took no time to learn about the opportunity or the company, or you've got questions you're too afraid to ask. When you have questions, it shows that you've really considered the opportunity. Once again, just by asking, you are conveying that you're someone that respects yourself. You make selective choices about where you're going to put your time and who you're going to let into your mind space and your phone and your email and into your 40 plus hours a week. So I have been told twice in my career that my post-interview thank you note was the best note they've ever read. What I do in an interview is I listen for something that is the employer's North Star. Basically, let's ask on a very basic level, why are we all here? The employer has a problem that needs to be solved, and the talent is the prospective solution to solve that problem. So as the talent, I want to know one thing. I don't want to make it too much to remember, because interviews are high, they're emotionally charged encounters. So I'm knowing going into the interview, if I haven't come up with any real questions based on the research I've already done, I want to know, what do you hope to accomplish with this new hire in the next 6 months? Something to that effect. Or what will success look like for you, Mr. Person I'm talking to right now, in 3 months? So that I can say, Dan, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed learning more about the company and the opportunity. And I'm confident that my writing experience, my passion for helping people, and my reverence for the words will help you reach 1 bajillion viewers in the next 3 months.
So let me see if I got that right.
Yeah.
I'm you. Okay. So you're the boss and you're interviewing me. So before I leave, say to you, wait a minute, I'm the boss. Okay.
No, I'm the boss.
No, wait, I'm you. I'm the interviewer. I'm the interviewee. Okay. So yes, before I leave here. So do you have any questions, Dan? Yeah, I do have a question. What does success look like wait, how would you phrase that?
So great. See what happened with Dan. We want to make this as clear cut as possible. So You be the boss and I'll be me. You be the boss.
Okay. So Heather, do you have any questions before you leave?
We've covered a lot, Dan. Thanks so much for your time. What I really want to know is, what do you hope to accomplish with this new hire in the next 90 days?
Okay. And you have another way of saying it too that I really liked. What does something look like for you?
What will success look like for you? The reason I opted not to use that one is because I think it's kind of broad, and it might, you want to be able to regurgitate words to the reviewer that demonstrate, that convince that you heard every word they said. So, and
that's a great point. Yeah.
Because if nothing else, you're reminding them of something they've already said. It's almost like, even if they didn't mean it, when they hear it back to them, they know that they said it, and then they know you were listening.
Right. And they'll be thinking, you get it, you get it, you get it. You speak
Yeah.
in my language. But also
Absolutely.
you said, okay, so let's say now that I'm you now, okay?
Okay.
So yes, Heather, before I go, could you tell me what are you looking to accomplish in this new hire? So tell me in a nutshell, and I'll see if I'm getting the next step right. I'm asking you to judge me.
Okay, I'm the interviewer. Sorry, I was reading the comment. I wasn't paying attention. Do it again. Sorry.
So Heather, yes, you just asked me if I had any questions before I left, and my question is, what do you really want to accomplish with this new hire? What is your goal? What do you see as success with this new hire?
Thanks for
asking. That's why I need to practice asking the question. So I would practice again. Yes, Heather, I do have a question. What do you hope to accomplish with this new hire?
I really want to get my online course up and running. I think that could be done in 6 months. I'd really like to revamp my website, and it would be very advantageous for the whole company if I optimize my YouTube channel.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Heather. Sayonara. Have a good day. So then I would go home and I would write you a thank you note. Actually, should I do it before I leave the building?
No.
Are these handwritten? Okay. So so there used to be think rules like that. So I am writing you a handwritten note saying, Heather, thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss the new position in your company. And I hope, how would I incorporate those 4 things? Because what I got is something like, I hope that whoever you choose, they're able to blah, 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 or I look forward to the opportunity to blah, blah, blah. How would you reframe those things in your thank you note?
Okay, so part of the reason some of my communication has been so effective is because I know I'm the right person. I mean, whether I'm right or wrong, I know it. And so I really bring that attitude to the letter. And so to answer my own question, if I was thanking me for the interview I just gave you, but it was me, I would say, thank you so much, Heather, for your time. This is so weird. Heather, thank you so much for your time. It was really great to learn more about you and the opportunity. I'm certain that my experience building courses with Dan O'Connor training.com will help you achieve your course publication, will help to optimize your YouTube channel, and will revamp your website within the first 6 months. This opportunity is particularly attractive for those 3 points. Thanks for your time. Buckle up. Sincerely, Heather Lipman. It's like,
okay. So you would write back and say, I hope that we have the opportunity to do those things. That tends to be your...
I wouldn't say I hope. And this is something I want. This is what I've learned in, I think it's called like the Sandler method of sales, where they talk about no Mother Mary, which is like very polite, and I do this a lot in my communication. I'm very polite, which I think I'm going to start to scale back on, but it's like, and it always started with, I hope this note finds you doing well. But would you kindly send me your resume? Best regards. Whenever it's convenient for you, I'm happy to accommodate all this Mary Mother stuff. I think we've reached a point where it's just too much and throw it out the window. So really what I want to do is take away that fluff. Remember you said no fillers, right? Same thing. Yeah. Take away the fluff and go right to the meat of the message, which is you need YouTube, you need a better website, and you need your course published. I'm here. Let's start tomorrow. And that's the attitude you're sort of regurgitating in the note. When you do that with polished, concise communication, what you call advanced communication, you send a package of passion, a package of competence, and a package of poise that nobody can turn down. I mean, it's just, you want someone to think of you when you smile. Ding, your tooth sparkles. Almost like a car salesman, but a good
someday.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Now let's go to. Are you seeing all these messages from?
Yeah, let's go through them. You know what?
Okay.
These people are so fantastic. Thanks for all your great comments and stuff. I just look at these fierce conversations.
And thank you, Swimming with the Fishes.
Swimming with the Fishes. He gets a lot of attention from us every week, but we love you all. Cool Breeze, I love it. The STAR method, I appreciate this secret sauce to performing well in interviews. It's so helpful. That formula is helpful.
Would you like to? We should do a recorded video on that STAR method so that people could have it as a reference.
what in the holy heck is an enterprise company or they're non-enterprise
That's
company?
a good question.
Yeah, to me, enterprise means like 5,000 employees or more. That was our customer segment. I'm referencing a sales job I had where I was a sales development representative. No, it's not on my LinkedIn profile, but I would be happy to talk about it one day. And so and I wasn't fired actually at all. They were really upset when I left, but I was there so shortly that I didn't put it on. Basically, I was assigned enterprise accounts, and that meant 5,000 employees or above. That's because I came in with a background from headhunting. My sales counterparts were used to targeting prospects that were more at manager level. I was used to targeting prospects at the executive level. And so naturally, the way the sales operation was divvied up was, you hunt who you know, basically. So for me, enterprise means 5,000 or more employees.
Oh, that's what that means. Okay.
To me, that's what it means to me.
Okay. Yeah. And I have a comment for Swimming with the Fishes.
Yeah.
He I don't know if it's a he or a she at the moment, but Swimming was saying, wouldn't saying you're someone with high standards make you appear to be a judgy judge? And that's, I think, a great observation. One of the things that I was just talking about, we were going to do a video on it. Actually, I think you and I were. If you didn't know that, I was trying to send you a psychic message, but you don't always receive them. And it was about people who say, "I'm a perfectionist. I'm just a perfectionist," and it's phrases like that at work. Maybe this could be included with one saying that I have high standards, because generally, if somebody were to say to us at work, it's a danger phrase for us to say things such as, "Well, I'm just a perfectionist," because what we should respond to that is, or let people know in some way, you have different standards than mine. Maybe you have a different way of doing things from other people. But some people, as you know, Heather, they think that, for example, they are a perfectionist because they just want everything done their way. It's not the perfect way, but like, how can we maybe help people get out who are judgmental, and by saying things like, "I have high standards," realize you just have different standards. Do you have any ways of
Well, the verbiage, you might not want to use the words high standards, but you could say, wouldn't saying you're someone with high standards make you appear to be judgy? So
But by the way, I do believe that we should sometimes say that, depending on the person.
Depending on the person, that's always really the answer to the question. Yeah. But we want to know what high standards means within that context. There are companies that boast that they deliver the number one, whatever service it is that they deliver. And so for them, you can logically assume that any service delivery that isn't aligned with what they define as the best would, if you're saying that you're committed to delivering the best that's according to their best standards, that's fine. I think people get afraid to answer questions in interview because they're like, is this the right answer or the wrong answer?
Yeah.
The right answer is always, is it tailored to your audience? So again, I know this is the bad news. The bad news is you have to do some research. The good news is you can do it. You can do the research. And
if you do it, I think it'll cut your total time down significantly, 100%. Right? Do you think, Heather, that is it true that sometimes during an interview they will leave you alone, walk out, grab somebody else to see what you do when you think nobody's watching?
I've never heard. That's so sick to me. That's like the sickest thing I've ever heard. Like, what is this? The FBI? You know what I mean? We sell widgets. What the heck are you doing? I would be so appalled. Even if I was unemployed and like literally 3 cents away from nothing, I still would be like, something's wrong with you guys. Like
But you've never heard of that, though. People, you never noticed somebody to do that.
You know what else I think is so weird? I was at an interview once and the guy was like, "This is a pencil. This is a pen. Here, you take it. Tell me what else it is." And I was like, "Bro, are we interviewing for a job though? Like, what do you mean? It's a pen. They want to see how creative you are." It's like, so ask me a question about being creative, but I guess I'm touchy.
I've had that too in an interview, that exact thing. And I'm like, I remember thinking, oh, rats, what is, oh God.
I'm like, it's like a really great throwing device. Let me just throw it at you, weirdo.
We want to be clear in our questions and answers.
Yeah. Yes. So I guess I want to answer Swimming's questions. Like, you have to know what they might perceive as over the top versus aligned with their mission. And you only know that by doing some research or paying someone like me to do the research for you.
Okay.
Can
I
you
apologize.
address what?
I got distracted with Swimmin because Swimmin really has good questions.
Okay, go for it.
So Swimmin was saying, I'm assuming Swimmin is a female now.
Women,
So,
can you let us know so we can have clarity?
yeah, it's like just so I know what pronoun to use.
Settle this debate.
So when your competency wins you the equivalent of a second full-time job because management isn't interested in increasing headcount, is that a plus to mention it, or does it make you look like an easy mark to be dumped on?
Great question. Wow, Dan, you really do have good taste. It's such a tough line. So during COVID, let's say, I was moved from just out of life sciences over to healthcare and biotech venture capital. And then when they started to bring people back, I was still there in all three areas. And I felt really like, yeah, I look like an easy mark to be dumped on, not that I'm being rewarded for being able to take on more. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. When your competency wins you the equivalent second full-time job, you need to be compensated for that. I mean, if you can accomplish in 8 hours what other people accomplish in 16, you need to be compensated for that. And if it's not where you are, then that's not where you should be. Yeah. And no one, it's much easier. You want to keep going up. You don't want to go backwards. And yeah, you'll know when that's happening because you're going to be seething. That's a perfect example of when someone would say, these people don't even know that I'm doing two people's jobs. These people don't even know that if it wasn't for me, they'd be being sued right now. These people don't even know. And those are the sort of tell me about the, you're on the phone with your best friend. That's the before and after story. That's the shortened, that's the Cliff's Notes star story, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really great. And, you'd want to look at your personal history and your professional history and say, is this a pattern? And if you've seen that in multiple experiences, you're feeling this way, then it might be time to figure, to consider how you can act differently in your next position so that you can experience a different response.
That's right. You have to be different to experience a different response.
Yeah.
Now, wait, I wanted to say something with Cool Breeze.
Yes, Cool Breeze.
Could you address this type of interview scenario? What's the reason for wanting to internally transfer to another position? What's the reason? So that's the question they might be asking you. Why do you want to transfer to another position? Example, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so she's working in I'm thinking it's a she. Example, I currently work in customer service for a community college, and the department is unorganized, poor training system, including the new communication structure in place is ineffective. All calls are wired to my department, and we can no longer transfer the students to the department whom they wish to speak to, financial aid or something like that. So instead, we create a work order for someone to contact the student within 1 to 2 business days, and it's not productive. It doesn't sound productive.
That's the worst.
That's the worst. So now the school wonders why there is only 22% enrollment rate, which I provided a solution during our annual improvements strategy meeting. So it sounds like Cool Breeze, if I'm not, do you get this vibe? Cool Breeze is looking for a department making a lateral move, and they're going to ask, why would you like to make this move? And should she say, well, because they're a bunch of ding-dongs who make things too complicated, and what do you say?
Yeah, so the first question I'd ask is, will you encounter this again in a different department at the same organization? This could be the trickle down of a specific leadership style, which has purview and supervision over all departments. You might find yourself in the exact same position in a different department. If you don't believe that's the case, you can just simply say, I've already championed this department. I see opportunities to which I can add in this department instead. Maybe do a little bit of research about the pains the department, your destination department is experiencing, and then, promote yourself in that sense. Well, I solved that problem over here. I want to solve that problem over there. But that sounds so typical of education, unfortunately. And it's entirely true. I just worked with a client who spent like months and then gave up figuring out what credits transferred to switch majors because everything went to this sort of automated, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. And what he did was he found the answer out from going to like a Reddit site He found questions to his matriculation. He found answers to his matriculation questions on sites outside of the university. That's really telling.
That's really telling, is right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Okay, what
really-
about Dan, police do that. What? Dan, police do that. I'm not sure what Stella's talking about. Thank you for asking my question about health. And as a bonus, okay, so that's a hey. The classic creative interviewers. Oh, you're applying for an account position. Here's a pen. Sell me this pen right now. Okay, so you know the one. They know the one. That's a horrible position to be in. Yes, I'm a female, and you asked me the other day about Mary and Anne. Oh, great. I'm seething, and I'm trying to get a profile upgrade and be able to jump through extra hoops for maybe. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, well, perfectly interpreted, Dan.
A profile upgrade, reach out to me at info@higherwriting.com. Let's talk about that. I want to also know what kind of hoops, and is it maybe good enough for you? I don't know.
Heather, by the way, redid my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Oh, please. Right. I didn't. Now I know I did not exist before at all in any universe. But because of Heather, not only do I exist, I am a shining star in that LinkedIn universe. So thank you, Heather, for that.
Sorry to just throw this up there, Dan, and completely distract you.
That's okay.
I found this before we signed on, and I just wanted to. I got trigger happy. Sorry, everyone.
No, that's great.
This. Oh my God! Hold on 1 second. Let me take it off. Oh my gosh.
In fact, my cousin, if this is what I'm thinking of, my cousin Kathy, who's visiting me right now.
Yeah.
She has 2 years paid time off built up because she never takes sick days and never has. So is that what that is?
Yeah. So I wanted to completely edit it for anonymity, but I missed a part. So I took it down really quick. Basically, I went to blindapp.com. This is that anonymous network I'm talking about. This person is talking about how they were at a company that was awarded unlimited PTO, never took 1 day, and then went to when his wife got pregnant and then was fired. And then at being fired, they didn't pay him out for the unused accrued vacation, which, by the way, has happened to me as well. I've had it actually deleted from my pay stubs, where I've had 96 hours the entire time I worked there, and then I was fired, and all of a sudden it zeroed down to 0. That is an absolute violation of wage. You can file a wage claim with the Department of Labor Relations or Industrial Relations. It's completely illegal, and companies do this all the time. It's so egregious. It makes me so angry. It's why I do what I do, and I'm so happy that I think his name is Kim is one of the co-founders of Blind, made this social platform for people to finally be able to say, hey, this is what's going on here. It's just not okay. The average Joe or Mary doesn't have the financial backing to get involved in the type of attorneys to battle these, corporate attorneys. It's just really a haphazard mismanagement of someone's career. It's not okay. And I don't think it's going to continue very long.
Well, you certainly told them, Heather.
It's
not okay. It's not going to. Okay. Heather, I think we've answered most of the questions.
I think so.
Did you have any question? Do you have any questions, Heather?
How the exec can get more confident in the small wins. He or she feels that they've had more engaged moving forward. Let's address this next week, and send a few questions if you have ahead of time. We've sort of moved through the job hunt life cycle in the past 3 weeks. We've talked about resume construction and cover letter construction. Today we touched on interviewing. And there is a whole lot more. So if you have anything specific, let us know ahead of time.
You know what I'd like to do, Heather? I think it'd be very helpful for people if we put together, for example, a simple document checklist. Here are the things that I want to do before I officially say I'm going to change positions. I'm looking for a new job. To prepare yourself, like the looking for a new job, maybe basic minimum career list, or the basic minimum checklist for a career change. For example, I want to make sure I know what my elevator pitch is. I want to have my resume done. I want to have.
Idea. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that's very good.
Let's do that for next week, and maybe we could in that packet have a list of questions, a list of things we want to make sure to say, make sure not to say. I don't know.
Perfect.
Okay, let's do that.
A candidate marketing package. That what you're talking about is the roadmap to creating a candidate marketing package. Absolutely.
Candidate marketing package. I was seeing if you would know what that was called. And
CMP.
Congratulations, you passed.
CMP, baby. What am I?
CMP. Get on with CMP.
CMP.
Alrighty. Yeah, you know me.
Oh, I do.
So I'd like to thank everybody so much for hanging in with us today. And by the way, this coming up week, Heather, I'm going to be doing some just question and answer. I haven't done a communication skills question and answer for a long time. And so I hope that you can join us maybe for some of that. Maybe you could, if nothing else, help us do questions or something. And
I would be
whatever.
honored.
I would be honored more. So look forward to that. When do you think would be a good day, Heather, for us to do like a communication question and answer? What's a good time and day? Wednesday?
I think Wednesday.
How about Wednesday are you free at 2?
Sure.
Let's do Wednesday at 2. So everybody who's on here today, if you would like to come join us Wednesday at 2, I think the topic, what do you think a good topic would be?
For communication skills?
Yeah.
I think we should talk about when you're in an should it be interview based, like professional?
Not necessarily. Like we haven't talked, it could be. We haven't talked about how to, for example, during these January 6 hearings, I'm assuming a lot of people at work are more confrontational than they were maybe a while ago. And how can we put the lid on some of that so that when we go to work, we're just working. I'm not here to, have a political fight with somebody.
Oh,
but some people are just itching for a fight these days. Maybe something like that. I don't know.
I think we could touch on, some of the boundary statements, some of the navigational statements, some of the, ways to spot passive aggressive communication. You're probably dealing with a lot of workplace bullies and energy vampires.
Okay. Then let's do the same thing then for next week, for this week, Wednesday at 1:00. If anybody has any specific situations that they're dealing, what did I say?
You said 2:00.
I was seeing if you were paying attention. You passed that one as well. Thank you, Ms. Lipman.
Perfect.
You're really in the running now for the grand prize.
Is that PST or wherever you are, ST?
That would be Central Standard. So Chicago time. Time is what I always say. So 2:00 Chicago time. And if you have questions or certain specifics that you would like us to address or that you would like me to address or Heather to address,
yes,
please send that in so that I can see those in advance and be prepared for that. And also, we're coming out with a new free seminar. I don't have it out yet, but look in the description below in the next couple of days. If you have been looking for a new course or something for a while and you haven't gotten that fix, it is coming out either today or tomorrow. So please take a look. Please keep an eye out for that link.
Okay. By the way.
Yes.
There she is.
Hi, Bella.
Hi, Bella. She's like, you're so annoying. Feed me.
I was going to have my dogs make an appearance today.
Where is
they just got a haircut, and so they're feeling a little bit self-conscious.
Oh.
So they're not coming in yet. Next time. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. Bella, thank you very much for joining us and keeping monitoring Ms. Lipman back there. For everyone here at Down Content Training and for Higher Writing.
Yes. Thank you all. Have a great weekend and email any questions to the email addresses I put in the chat. It's under Dan's avatar.
And by the way, thank you, Heather, for being so willing to share so much with us in these past few episodes. I have really enjoyed it, and I look forward to a long, beautiful relationship.
As do
with you too.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So I really appreciate all of the insight that you've given us, especially because it's been free for me. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And if people would like to hire you for whatever services, whether it's, because Heather, please give me a rundown real quick of your services that you provide. You do not just resume writing, but copywriting and things like that as well.
Copywriting, ghostwriting, resume writing, lead generation, lead cultivation, outreach. I'm research and writing. So anything that will bring you money from research and writing, I'm your gal.
Yeah, when I see your writing, sometimes you get somebody who's really good at writing, so you're kind of challenged to find errors in what they write. You know what I mean? So you start looking through this stuff. I'm gonna find something, and
Do it.
I can't do it. I can't do
Right.
it. So that you are so off the hook good at writing. I can't believe it. So anything
Thank you.
I would hire you to write anything.
Perfect.
Me.
I'll accept. Let's get started. Buckle up. Here we go.
Okay, we'll talk about that this afternoon.
All right.
Thank you,
perfect.
Heather.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. See you next time.
See you next time on Tuesday at 2.
Wednesday at 2.
Wednesday 2. I was testing you, and again, you passed.
I know. We really need to get a Miss Croissant, people.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, I have to do this.
And the broadcast.
Live.